While we're waiting for everyone to get mic'd up, can I just say, don't we all feel so well nourished by today? Not just by the tremendous lunch, but just by all the information that we're all soaking up and exchanging. Thank you, Pakir, for making this whole day possible.
No, I thank to all of you, the panelists, speakers, moderators, and all of you in the audience for making this possible.
So we are going to have about a half an hour to talk, and then we will spend some time taking questions. But can I just tell you now that I went outside just now, and I've seen all the kueh that Kira has prepared for our tea break. Okay, so when we take questions, you don't make your question last 10 minutes. Okay? Phrase it, be nice, short and sharp. We answer, then we can all go out and eat some more.
This morning, I had the good fortune of having this wonderful thing that Christopher baked for me yesterday. Christopher baked for me bingka ambon. I had a slice of that. When Christopher bakes something like, you can get it in the shops. But this whole bingka ambon thing requires a bit of unpacking, right? What's in the name, right? Let's take a look at the etymology. Maybe we save that for another day. It'd be great to do a little discourse on big.
If anyone wants to know about Bika Ambon, please go and see Fadli Rahman, because he and his students have been working on this as a project. He mentioned it in his talk earlier, just about all the different Bika, Bingka, Bibingka across the ASEAN region and Nusantara. So it's a huge topic. That could be one book on its own.
Yeah, it's wonderful to take a look at this cognates here. Please, just enjoy.
Okay, so as Bill Beeman is getting mic'd up here, so we're going to be talking about comfort food. And I think where we should begin is I just want to ask everyone a two-part question. Firstly, how do you define the term comfort food? And then the second part is, what do you consider your own personal comfort food? So to give you an example, for me, to qualify as a comfort food, it would have to be something that instantly alters my mood after it goes in my mouth. And also, it has to be something that if I haven't had it for a while, I start longing for it. So it must increase positive emotion and evoke a sort of a craving emotions when I don't have it. So and for me, I am what the Cantonese would call fan tong, rice bin, because all my comfort foods revolve around rice, in one way or another. Okay. So how about you all, Toffa? Can we start with you?
Okay. So I actually agree with what you've just described. It has to alter your how you feel at that moment, and I think it kind of reminds me of if you've actually watched Jiro Dreams of Sushi. It's about this famous sushi shop in Ginza, Tokyo. How he described having a beer and just that feeling of yeah. So for me, I think comfort food is also that kind of emotion. The
moment.
Yes, it settles you, it soothes you, alters your moment, your feeling for that moment. Yeah, and also a lot of times for me, comfort food is things that I actually grew up with eating, and things that were cooked by my grandmother and my mom, especially my grandmother. She was the matriarch of the family, and sometimes when you eat a particular dish, it could be a laksa that's cooked by another person and not that family member. It doesn't give that same, even though it may not be better, but it just has that, for me, I feel like it has a homeliness to it, a very familiar sense of, it also relates to, memories of home. The smells of the kitchen, and also sometimes when you just come home, you're so tired, and there in front of you on the table is a wonderful meal prepared by your family, and it's just that kind of emotions related to it.
So would laksa be one of yours then?
Yes, definitely. I dreamt of it a lot when I was overseas.
Wow.
And that was how I actually got into studying food history. I was overseas in Germany for an exchange semester many years ago. And every single day I was like, I need laksa. And I actually dreamt of, a water dispenser that would just dispense laksa gravy. That was my
Niche in
dream.
the market. Don't take down. Someone take advantage of this.
I was like, laksa. Yes.
Tofa Dreams of Laksa, yeah, an upcoming film, huh? Kevindra, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's similar, like almost the same comfort food. For me, it's something that reminds me of home. It's like a mother's hug, you know. It's more into the emotional side other than the flavor profile itself. And I think the people's attention to comfort food sometimes evoke when they are drastically separated from home, when they're overseas, when they work outside of the first time they move out from the parents' house, and that needs for comfort food suddenly appears. So I think it has more something to do with emotional stuff other than the dish itself. For me, comfort food would be my grandmother's asam asam. So it's a simple oxtail that you put in like a simple brine beef stock, and then you put gula melaka inside, and then garlic and then shallots and then galangal, and then we have daun salam we call it, and then chili padi, they crush it inside, and then belimbing uluh, heap of that you put inside and just wait until the magic happens, and the aroma and everything, it's so nice, it's comforting, it's like a remedy, right? It's like your own family's penicillin.
It's a cure-all. Right?
Cure all the sickness and the emotional needed that you need. I think that's comfort food.
How about you, Bill?
Sensory information that we have connects to events. It connects to actual social events, and our sensory feelings are so incredibly powerful that they're evocative. They're right away evocative. In literature, we see this a lot. The very, very famous passage from Marcel Proust, Remembrances of Things Past. He has the Madeleine, the little Madeleine cookie, and he tastes the Madeleine, and all of a sudden, everything about his past comes back. And I have another reference that I like very much, and this is in the cartoon film Ratatouille. And I think everybody remembers that this terrible critic who is being so mean to the cook, he gets his dish of ratatouille, this simple French dish with eggplants, and he has one bite, and all of a sudden, he's back in his mother's kitchen, and everything is being remembered.
So, what is your personal ratatouille, Bill?
Well, it's probably my grandmother's cooking, and I think that's going to be common for everybody when we talk about comfort food. We go back to our grandmothers, who always were the best cooks, and even my mother says that her grandmother was the best cook. When I think of my grandmother's kitchen, she had she lived in Minneapolis, a very cold place, but during the Depression, they had an urban garden. They had a second plot of land, and they grew almost everything themselves. And so whenever we would visit her, she had fresh fruit, she had fresh cookies, and she also baked her own bread. And I remember the smell of fresh baked bread. I can even remember it today. And I remember her standing in her kitchen with her apron full of flour and the bread coming out of the oven. And it was really a kind of a wonderful memory, like with Ratatouille or with Proust or with Marcel Proust.
So all three of you have mentioned home cooking and family cooking specifically. I want to throw out the question, must comfort food be attached to the home kitchen? Can a comfort food be hawker food or even restaurant food or maybe even high-end restaurant food? What do you all think?
When we're talking about memories, especially social memories, every time we get together with people on a special occasion, it's a kind of ritual. It's almost a religious experience. We had a wonderful dinner last night, and I think that all of us are different people. We're changed as a result of having eaten together. And especially if the food turns out to be really wonderful, as we were fortunate enough to have wonderful dinner last night. When you share a food experience with other people, you remember it really for the rest of your life. I'm sure that we know that. The food that you eat at for instance, at a big occasion like a wedding, is also something that you probably will remember for a long time. In the West, people make a kind of a fetish out of wedding cakes, and so when you go to a wedding and you see this fantastic wedding cake, and you'll be able to talk about it for years and years and years afterwards. Because it's a memorable culinary and a memorable social experience.
I think to add with that, I also have a story. I think amazing story, and it changed the way I see comfort food, because I think like many years I always think that comfort food has always something to do with home, right? And I still believe it's that. But a friend of mine, I remember I met him when we was in high school, and then we have this discussion about food what we love, or the comfort food. And then he told me, oh yeah, my comfort food was burger and fries. I was like, burger and fries, you're Japanese, you have lots of history, burger and fries. And then he mentioned the story that makes me, it changed the way I see comfort food. He said like, oh yeah, because when I was a kid, his father is an amazing swim teacher. So every Saturday, they will like go to swim and teach my friends on swimming. And after swim, they always have burger and fries. And then his father passed away, and every time he eats burgers and fries, it reminds him of the father, and it became the idea of comfort food for him. So I was like, it doesn't have to be home cooking. It's something that relates to the moments, like you say, to the family, that attach to your soul and to your to all of you. Right?
I have a similar story to that. So my dad, when we were younger, he would always bring us to Daimaru, which is a Japanese supermarket / department store that used to be located at Liang Court, near Clarke Quay, which has also been torn down. And during that time, he was in the construction industry, and a lot of Japanese companies were around. So he got a lot of Japanese friends, and he was exposed to Japanese food, and I guess he fell in love with Japanese food. So he started bringing me to Daimaru and having maki sushi, gunkans, nigiri, as a kid. And from that point, when I was growing up, I was like, I have to go to Japan someday, to visit this place where all these wonderful foods came from. And so I did eventually go to Japan. And it's just very comforting to eat something that is not of my heritage, but it's of my memories of home and my dad. Yeah.
And Topher, I believe you shared with us earlier, we were all on a group chat talking about comfort food, that you recently added some Korean dishes to your list of comfort foods.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I think comfort food also comes after you have experienced something very challenging. In this case, I recently went to Korea, and Korea is 70% mountains. So I went to hike, and I was so famished at the end of the day. And there was a bowl of tofu soup, or sundubu, which you make with gochujang and just a local variety of tofu in a rural part of Korea. And it was so warming, and it just reminded me of the kinds of soups that I would eat at home, like a hot bowl of like my mother's tom yum soup, not a Malay dish, but it's still something that is from home. And also my grandmother's like asam rebus, and those kinds of very warming kind of dishes. Yeah.
What kind of power do you think comfort food has in helping us to define our own identity and our understanding of our personal heritage? Is it inextricably linked to how we see ourselves and how we understand ourselves within our communities?
I think that's really true. That there are certain foods that are associated with national identity, and when you encounter them, when you eat them, or when you find them in a remote place, then all of a sudden it reminds you of who you are, as well as as well as your kind of home experience. I was really interested to know that we've been talking about Rangan today. I didn't realize that it's it actually is a UNESCO cultural heritage item, and it's an intangible cultural heritage item. So it's more than just a meat that's cooked in coconut milk. It's actually a process, and a really difficult process actually. It also I read that there was a survey that said that Rangan turns out to be in a couple of surveys like the #1 most delicious food in the world, or on the list of the top 10 most delicious foods in the world. I'm not sure everybody would think that, so if you were in Stockholm, for instance, and suddenly somebody puts a plate of Rangan in front of you, and you're from Malaysia or Indonesia, all of a sudden it takes you right back home. It immediately reinforces your identity in a really, I think, a really important way. We have a terrible we have a food that we consume in Minnesota from people of Norwegian heritage. It's called lutefisk. Anybody know what lutefisk is?
If you thought Pakasam was pungent,
and lutefisk is for the Norwegians in Minnesota. It is so common that you can buy it in the supermarket in bags, and it's something that's done during Christmas. And you get a plate of lutefisk and boiled potatoes. It's all white.
It's fish that has been cured in lye water in alkaline solution.
And so it turns into a kind of jelly. And I would say it's an acquired taste. like natto.
You think?
Like natto in Japan. But they have lutefisk dinners in Minnesota, and the Norwegians come and they eat it, and they say we don't like it, but we have to eat it because
we're Norwegian.
Because we're Norwegian.
Toffa, you have something to add? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the food that you grew up with becomes your point of reference as your baseline. So sometimes for me, I find myself like comparing a certain non-Malay dish to something that is Malay. Like for example, when I was in Japan for a summer school, I stayed with a host family, and for many of the recipes that the host mother would cook, it was Japanese food, washoku or yoshoku, But on the final day, the eve of the day before I left the family, she cooked this prawn toban dish, and when I tasted it, it just reminded me so much of sambal tumis udang, and I was so emotional. And I tried to explain to them what was sambal tumis udang in the very little Japanese that I knew, and it was very hard to communicate. But I showed them pictures, and they're like, okay, it looks similar. But I think even though it may not have that same note of like belacan or that umaminess that comes through with a sambal tumis, it's the texture, the look of the food item, and the fact that we ate it with rice, and it was just evocative of home. Yeah.
So even that faint likeness to your home dish was enough to sort of provoke your that emotional response to the identity.
Yes,
your identity.
That's right. And out of all the dishes I ate from the host mom, I felt like that dish that dish was the one that I remember the most because of how it made me feel.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to go on to something else, but maybe okay. So Kevindra, earlier on you were sharing with us about this experience that you had in Jogja related to comfort food. Can you please share that with all of us?
So this is a funny story because last week I went to Yogyakarta because I currently writing a book about the custodians of Indonesian food. So I'll be traveling around like Sumatra and then so last week I went to the Royal Palace of Yogyakarta. So I met with the princess and the grandchildren of the current Sultan of Jogja. So we had a good tea together, and then at the same time the topic for this talking session arrived on my phone. It's like, okay, let's ask the question, right? So I asked one of the grandchildren of the Sultan, of the princess, about the idea of comfort food, right? So what do you think about comfort food? And then she looked at the mother, which is the princess, and they look at each other, and it's like, we don't have something that we call as comfort food. I was like, wow, why is that? Because they said like, yeah, because every day we live in the same palace, we eat the same food, and we understand the identity of it. This is ours. So they don't feel the need. So comfort food is their everyday life. And I was like, oh wow, that's why they are so attached to that identity. So even they don't have this kind of they don't have this kind of emotion where they miss certain kind of food because they eat the same food every single day. It's like, wow, that's really interesting.
So they have no nostalgia for their heritage
No
because
nostal-
it's always right there in front of
Right
them.
there in front of them, like since the grandfather and the first sultan, very way back. It's really interesting because for me, that's why I realized perhaps us that lives in the more kind of exposed to different kinds of culture, society in a more modern cities, we are. As we all spoke that you went to Japan and then some people they go abroad and leave their parents' house. The idea of comfort food, that's what the reality is, right?
So ironically, you need some distance from home
Yes.
to help you crystallize
The
your idea of what
comfort
is your
food.
comfort food
Yes.
and what marks your identity.
Exactly.
Yes, Bill.
I'm sure this is true throughout the world, but in the United States in particular, we have a large population of people from other countries whose their heritage is from other countries. They're many of them through third, fourth, fifth generation, and every year you have you have festivals in cities all throughout the United States. They're often organized by churches, which is interesting. So you have a Greek festival with the Greek church, the Coptic festival with the Coptic church, the Italian festival for the Catholic church, and these festivals are mostly food festivals, actually, and so you have this interesting tie between the religious establishment and these food festivals where people come where they can eat the traditional foods. The baklava or the pizza or whatever they identify with, and reinforce their own sense of identity by participating in these kinds of activities. I don't know whether this is common throughout Southeast Asia, this part of the world. I suspect you would find it in Australia, though. I'm not sure, but.
Now we're going to go on to take questions in just a couple of minutes, but I don't want to end this session without throwing out this very important question. Given that all around the world it seems home cooking seems to be decreasing in frequency. People are eating out more, people are ordering in more, people are using food delivery platforms, and fewer people. Certainly, I'm a cooking instructor and a cookbook author, and I can see that fewer and fewer people are actually cooking at home these days. So in the face of that, how is that affecting our ideas and conceptions about comfort food and home food and heritage food?
No, I don't know if you have this so much here. In the United States, we're having a lot of cooking competition shows, and these are and in the UK as well. So the Great British Baking Show, we have American Home Cooking Show, and these are all amateur cooks. They're supposedly amateur cooks. They're awfully good. I mean, they do a lot better than I think I ever could in the kitchen. But one of the interesting things in the American home cooking contest show is that they oftentimes give them a task, and they say, please cook the thing that brings back the fondest memory that you ever had. And a lot of the cooks are from different ethnic backgrounds too. So somebody will come in with a Jamaican jerk chicken, another person will come in with a West African, kind of fufu thing, or somebody inspired by their Korean heritage. And then they tell the story. They say, this is what my mother made when I was 5 years old, and this has always been my favorite food. And they're good. They're good cooks. So I'm hoping that maybe people who watch these shows are going to be more inspired to try to do more in their own home cooking.
I think for me, I could say what happened also in Indonesia, I think in many parts of the world, is that what's the future of comfort food, right? Usually, every one of us, we can say comfort food is a home cooking because we experience our parents, our grandparents still cook at home. But in today's world, less and less people are cooking at home. So I think the most important part is that where the next generation would have this attachment of comfort food, and how to make comfort food actually the food of identity. Like they eat not only comfort food, but the food that they're familiar with their own identity, right? So to encourage future cooks, especially not only cooks lah, restaurants. That's why in Jakarta, Indonesia, now more and more restaurateurs, chefs, they came back from abroad, homecoming, and then they tried to focus on their own ethnic cooking, ethnic cuisines. And that's some people, even in my restaurant, some people like, oh, I didn't know that we have this food heritage. Oh, I didn't know that we have this kind of food. And I hope we are doing that, the newer generation, now they can relate to, oh, this is at least a glimpse of my culture, of my food culture that I could encounter, even though they cook with delivery food every day. Yeah.
I think comfort food, of course, is different for different people. For those who are privileged to have had a family that cooks at home, most of the time your comfort food will be something that is from home. But for people that do not have that privilege, then and perhaps their families didn't cook much, they would order takeout, eat at hawker centers. So your comfort food may be a particular char kway teow or a nasi lemak from a stall in some gerai in a hawker center. And that's okay. But I think there is, for me, I feel like I was in our conversation offline, I was trying to see whether there's a Malay word that actually means comfort food. I couldn't think of one. But I think the closest, or maybe it's a misnomer at the same time to equate them, would be air tangan, the water from the hen, which is, you would normally use this word to associate it to someone who is special, or someone who actually made the food at home or cook it from scratch, versus something that is produced commercially, or even like mass produced in a factory. Let's say you have frozen rendang. There's no air tangan in that. Maybe air machinery or something. I don't know. The robots.
Air robot.
Yeah. So the word air tangan, I feel it even though it does not translate directly to comfort food, but it connotes the element of comfort or familiarity. Yeah, and I feel like even with the gamut of food outside that you can buy, I wish that there's the importance of having to be able to cook at home, to let that air tangan develop.
I just want to encourage everyone, if you have a family dish or a home dish that is your comfort food, please record it. Okay, for future generations, not just of your family, but for anyone you come into contact with, just so that we've never been more able to record and save things in technological terms in the history of the world. So save all these things, preserve them, whether or not, however many times you will cook it in the future, at least you will have a record of it, and then people will know. Okay, I think we can take some questions now. And does anyone have any questions? Yes, over there, the gentleman standing up. Yeah.
So since we're on the topic on food and identity, I wanted to touch on about this Peranakan food and identity. So I want to ask the panelists, how is this distinctively different, say, from the Nusantara types of cuisine
Okay, question is, how different is Peranakan food from Nusantaran food? I find it interesting that you will consider it something separate from Nusantaran food. Okay, and I know Pakir has a lot to say about that. Any thoughts? How is Peranakan food different from Nusantaran food? Okay, as a Peranakan myself, I can tell you my perspective. I consider Peranakan food to be a subtype of Nusantaran food because it evolved, it came about within the context of Nusantara. You know?
Yeah, I think to add to that, I remember very vividly this podcast that Kir was on, in which he talked about Peranakan food, you know, like all these different communities, the port cities where Peranakan communities develop. The mother cuisine is the local, the Malay. And the Peranakan comes in from Jawi Peranakan, the Indians, the Chinese. So it all developed within this Nusantara. So it's like what Chris said, it is a subset of Nusantara food. And it is Nusantara food. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't actually realize that Peranakan cuisine is not one thing. You know, you have in Indonesia, you have Indonesian style Peranakan cuisine. You have in the peninsula, you have Singaporean style Peranakan cuisine. You have Chinese Peranakan cuisine. You have Indian Peranakan cuisine, aka Chetty Malaccan cuisine. You know, you look at the Peranakan cuisine of Terengganu and Kelantan. It's completely different to what they cook in Malacca down in Singapore. And then Penang style Peranakan food is another animal altogether. So it in itself is not a unitary thing, you know. And I think one of the themes that is clearly emerging today, as Annette pointed out earlier, that there is so much more that connects us as children of Nusantara in culinary terms. There's so much more that connects us than things that separate or differentiate us, you know. And to me, the most fascinating thing is the things that we share, not the things that differentiate. Yeah. Bill, sorry, you had something to add?
I can't speak to the finer points of this question, but I do know that wherever you have a cuisine, there are regional differences, and I don't care where you go, Europe, France, or Italy, and you go from one region to another, and people will say, "Well, this is good, but it really isn't like I remember it." You know, there's something wrong. They're using a different spice. It tastes good. I like it, but it's not what I would consider to be the original, the kind of the original formulation. But that sort of variety is really important. I mean, it's a little bit like genetics. We have natural human genetics in order to provide diversity in the genetic pool. And I think that you need that diversity in the culinary pool as well. I think someone told me that, I didn't know this actually, someone told me that Princess Pineapple was not an original food in Malaysia. It's not. It's a South American food that was imported, and the same thing. Our discussion about peppers, chili peppers, a really, really interesting discussion, because the introduction of chili peppers filled an important gap in the cuisine, and now it's been incorporated as part of it. So we expect that. We expect that change and that variation to take place over a period of time as cuisine evolves.
You ask any culinarian, you ask Fadli, you ask Kevindra, you ask myself, what the cuisine of a community is what the entire community makes. As someone who has written cooking Q&A columns and someone who teaches, also I get a lot of questions like, what's the correct way to make this curry? What's the correct way to make rendang? And there is no single correct way. It's all the ways together that constitutes the concept of rendang. So I'm sure we all have that one relative who insists that their way or the highway, right? There's only one way to do this, and that's not how cuisine works. That's not how anthropology works. A culture is created in community and in the context of a community and includes that whole community. There's no right, there's no wrong. There's just what all the community does together. Any other questions? Yeah. Yes,
Hello.
over there.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I just want to share an encounter I had with a food I've never had before. And then.
Can I just remind you that we have kueh waiting outside? Huh?
Okay,
Yes,
I
thank you.
will. It's a very short one. When I was in the States, one of my university mates came from the Maldives, and his family would send him his comfort food. And it was called, if I remember correctly, ryoka or ryokan, and it's very unctuous, like almost like a chutney made from seafood, and it was fermented. And when I tasted it, it reminded me of actually not bovril, but the other one, marmite, which
Wow.
I used to have to put in my white porridge when I was sick. And I hated white porridge. But with this, the marmite, which this food reminded me of, it became comfort food. Now, my proposition to the panel is, do you think that the comfort food we have when we are young becomes the palate that we use to search out other foods?
Great question.
I think I kind of touched on it just now when I said that the foods that we eat as a child becomes our baseline as a frame of reference. And when you eat something that is foreign, you are using that already existing frame in your mind to understand the food that you just encountered. It's very reminiscent, you know. It's like, oh, this one tastes like this one tastes like that. It's because the vocabulary that you already have in EU, right? It's like, how do you describe a food that is foreign? It's always through what you already know, in order to make sense of it.
Tastes like chicken.
And also just to bring out some a bit of like not to do with like reminiscing food, but there were also like in the past when the colonial people or the Western travelers, when they traveled through the Nusantara and they encountered things like terasi, belacan, they would always use their own frame of reference from a European point of view to describe the food. Smelly cheese, blue cheese. They would call it those names because of how smelly the food was. But when we compare blue cheese and belacan, same but different? Not really, right? I mean, it has that funkiness that is familiar to the European people who are coming, but it tastes different because the base product is different from a dairy versus a seafood product. But it's always something that people will always take their own frame of reference from where they came from, their own cultural background to make sense of the things they encounter.
I think that's also a very great question. I'm going to add a little bit of that. It reminds me of the story of my family, my grandmother. So my granddad, he was a army and then a diplomat also. So, and my grandmother, she's an amazing cook, especially in Java. But she has this rule that my mother was actually like, resent, like, oh my God. She always said, like, every time you go to my house, and we actually lives in my grandparents' house for, I think, around 14 years, right? Like, she has this one rule that you can only eat foreign food only 3 times a week. Exactly. And my mom,
3 times maximum
3 times
a week.
maximum. And my mom was like, yeah, she sneaked me a little bit like KFC and stuff, all this stuff. But now I understand why. Now I realize she actually tries for the grandchildren to develop the palate as an identity of you are Indonesian, you're Java. So when we grow up, we realize, oh, this is our identity. This is our identity of, like you said, like the flavor reference. We trace back to who we are, the understanding. Back then, of course, I'm angry. I want the fast food that my friends eat. I want this. I want spaghetti bolognese, stuff like that. But now I realize the beauty of that kind of rule that my grandmother put it. Yeah.
When I wrote my book, The Way of Kueh, I interviewed a lot of kueh makers, and many of them made the point to me that, you know, when they were young, they started like in the kitchen when they were 6 or 7, having to pluck tauge or helping to grind spices, and all of them, you know, expressed to me that you must train your kids to appreciate the flavors of their own heritage when they are young. Make it natural and everyday for them, and then that way they will grow up and they will not lose sight of it. And I think that is so important. Not just with comfort food, but with any food, you have to expose children to it. Don't let them order their own food from McDonald's or whatever delivery platform, but consciously let them taste the best of their country and their community. I always say.
Just one brief story. When I first went to Nepal, I was in northern Nepal, and I first encountered people who served me salted tea with butter. Salted tea with butter, and I drank it, and I thought, oh my God, what in the world is this? And then it occurred to me that if I thought of it as soup, it would be just fine, and then it was quite okay. Yeah, as long as I thought of it as soup and not salted tea with butter.
The first time I had that in Tibet, I was like, oh, this is mushroom soup without the mushroom. Okay, shh. Can you hear that? It's the kueh calling to us. You can hear, right? Okay, a big hand for the panelists, everyone. I know you will enjoy the tea, and I know you will enjoy the last two panels that we have on today. Thank you for coming.